I couldn't believe it. My ex showed up at my door after ignoring our son for years. He looked me in the eye and said, "I just want to be a dad." But I knew better. A few years ago, I, 26F, had an affair with a married man, 42M. When we first met and became involved, I had no idea he was married. I did look him up on social media, and while he had pictures of his kids, there was no mention or sign of a wife. It wasn't until about a month into our relationship that I discovered the truth. He claimed that his marriage was only on paper, that he and his wife led separate lives but stayed together for practical reasons until their children were older. They also owned a business together, which she primarily managed while he was just financially involved. Looking back, I knew deep down that I shouldn't have believed him, but I let myself buy into his story. I was in my early 20s, completely drawn to him, and almost infatuated. He made me feel amazing. I now realize I should have ended things immediately, but at the time, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I became addicted to the attention, the passion, the exciting places he took me. It all made me feel special, but in reality, I was just incredibly naive. About a year into our affair, I got pregnant. I had always been careful, but with him, I took reckless risks. My infatuation clouded my judgment. I was so caught up in the passion and everything he wanted from me that I ignored the consequences, even when I knew better. I thought I loved him, at least, that's what I believed at the time. I never planned to get pregnant, though I often fantasized about being his wife and having a family with him. I knew that was unrealistic given his situation, but the idea still lingered in my mind. When I found out I was pregnant, I was surprisingly happy. Carrying his child felt meaningful to me, but deep down, I knew he wouldn't share my feelings. When I told him, he insisted I couldn't keep the baby. I expected that response, but it still shattered me. He offered to pay for the procedure, suggested turning it into a getaway weekend, which was disturbing, and even offered to buy me something nice, anything to convince me to terminate the pregnancy. He made it clear he didn't want more children and that acknowledging another child would be impossible while maintaining the illusion of a happy marriage. I agreed to go through with it, and we planned for him to pick me up and take me somewhere out of town for the procedure. But the night before, I became overwhelmed with fear and a deep sense of unease. I packed my things and checked into a hotel instead. I couldn't go with him. I sent him a message saying I'd disappear from his life. I wouldn't name him as the father or seek child support, on the condition that he never contacted me again. At first he tried to sweet-talk me into doing what he wanted. When I didn't cave in, he said some very nasty things to me and that I essentially better never contact him again or show up at his door. I have a 2-year-old now. At times, it's been difficult, but overall we are thriving as best we can. I have kept my word about not naming his as the father or requesting child support. His wife contacted me on social media. Well, she's his ex-wife now. She wants to talk to me. She found out about me and told me that she divorced him 6 months ago. She wants her children to know their sibling and for my child to know his siblings. That's weird to me. I haven't responded back to her yet. I am unsure about how to approach this. How do I respond to this? I wonder if I'm being selfish by not exploring an option for my child to know his siblings, if she's being genuine about that. If I was married and my husband fathered a child outside of our marriage, I don't think I'd feel the same that she does. Update. 3 weeks ago, I made a post, and since then, things have only become more unusual. A few years ago, I had an affair with a married man, something I deeply regret and will never repeat. From the beginning, I knew it was wrong, but I was drawn to him. I was naive and allowed myself to believe his claim that his marriage was merely for the sake of their children. When I became pregnant, he pressured me to have an abortion, but in the end, I chose to keep the baby. Now, I have a 2-year-old son. I promised this man that I wouldn't reveal our affair, formally identify him as the father, or seek child support. I made that decision because he had become increasingly hostile about the situation, and by the time it was all over, I felt that cutting ties completely was the best course of action for everyone. Wanting to start fresh, I moved back to my hometown, putting hundreds of miles between myself and him. About a month ago, his ex-wife unexpectedly contacted me through social media. She told me that they had been divorced for 6 months and that she wanted our children to have the opportunity to know each other. Given that her kids are teenagers, I found it strange that she would want them to bond with a toddler, especially one from an affair. It didn't make much sense to me. After making my post here, I decided not to respond to her message. Since she had only reached out once and wasn't persistently trying to get in touch, I figured it was best to ignore it. Then, on Friday night, I changed my mind and messaged her. I'm not entirely sure why. I think I just wanted to apologize. However, I told her I would feel more comfortable speaking face-to-face since I couldn't be sure it was actually her. She understood, and while I was too anxious to meet in person, we ended up having a video call instead. I wasn't sure what to expect, whether this was some kind of setup for her to finally unleash her anger on me. And honestly, if that had been the case, I would have deserved it. I couldn't blame her for feeling that way. It was really her. She told me she discovered our affair when she found communications between the two of us after our relationship had ended. She told me I'm one of many women he had affairs with over the years, and she knew about somebody even before he met me, but she didn't divorce him at the time. Finding out about my child was the final straw for her. I told her I was sorry for my relationship with her husband and admitted that I knew he was married. She graciously told me she forgives me and that while she harbored a lot of anger towards me initially, she ultimately blames her husband. I'm not blameless, but she chooses to not hate me, essentially. She said she couldn't have said this 6 months ago or a year ago when she first found out about me, but she has moved past that. She still has anger toward him, in addition to many other emotions surrounding him. She started pouring out her heart to me about their 20-plus-year marriage and life together, and it was very awkward because what do I even say? Her kids know about me and my son. She says they're very mad at their father. Somehow I don't think they're mad about the fact that he's not involved with my son's life. And why would they be mad about that? I would hate me if I were them. I told her that since my son is still so young, I don't feel comfortable with him meeting her children or becoming involved with their family just yet. I'm uncertain about the idea, and right now, I don't see it as something that needs to happen. That's when she mentioned that her ex-husband had been in a serious accident 2 months ago. He's recovering well and is expected to be fine, though he hasn't been cleared to resume all of his normal activities yet. Knowing how physically active he is, always on the move and never one to sit still, I can only imagine how restless and frustrated he must be. She then told me that he wants to meet my son. Apparently, after his accident, she temporarily moved back in to help him recover, and during that time, he expressed a lot of regret about not being involved in my son's life and not providing for him. Now, I can't help but wonder if everything she told me was just a setup. Did he convince her to reach out on his behalf? And if so, did she actually go along with it? At first, talking to her felt almost like a relief, but now, I'm questioning whether any of it was genuine or if she was just acting as his messenger. And if he truly regrets everything, why wouldn't he reach out to me directly? I just feel uneasy about the whole situation now. Update. I posted about this a few months ago. To give a quick summary, right after graduating college, I got involved in an affair with a married man who had children. I ended up getting pregnant. He wanted me to have an abortion and even planned a trip under the guise of a vacation to take me away for the procedure. At the time, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted, but I initially agreed to go along with his plan. However, at the last minute, just as he was on his way to pick me up, I told him I couldn't go through with it. Something about the way he was controlling everything unsettled me, and I realized just how deep I'd gotten into a situation that was completely wrong and unhealthy. His reaction was furious. He threatened me and said some really cruel things. In response, I told him that if he just left me alone and let me have my baby in peace, I would keep my promise to never name him as the father or seek child support. After that, I moved back home, away from the state where I had met him, and I kept my word. My child, now 2 years old, has no legal connection to him, and I have never sought financial support. A few months ago, his ex-wife reached out to me through social media. At first, she made it seem like she simply wanted my son to have the opportunity to know his half-siblings. It felt odd, especially since her kids are teenagers, but she mentioned that she had divorced him 6 months earlier. I agreed to speak with her over a video call rather than in person. I felt that I owed her an apology for my role in everything, and I do genuinely regret what happened. However, by the end of our conversation, I made it clear that I didn't feel it was the right time for my son to connect with her children. He's still a toddler, and they are much older, plus I had made a promise to stay out of her ex-husband's life. That's when she revealed that he had recently been in a serious accident, and she had been helping care for him. Though he was recovering well and expected to be fine, she told me that he had expressed a desire to meet our child. At that moment, I realized she was acting as his messenger all along. I have not been in contact with her since then. I deleted my social media. I don't know why, but the whole thing just really made me uncomfortable. Since I last posted here. Then, I received a handwritten letter from him. In it, he expressed how he wanted to get to know our son, he wants to be a father to our son, he wants to provide financially for him, he'd like us to come visit him. He asked me to sign a paternity affidavit. I refused to do so. I know he is my son's father, but I'm not going to make this that easy for him. After the things he said to me and threatened me with, he at least has to work for this. At that point, my parents felt that we needed to meet with a lawyer. All communication from me has gone through a lawyer. I have never responded to him personally/directly. Now, I have a court order for paternity. I have to present my son to have a specimen taken tomorrow. I already know what it's going to say. It's not that I don't want my son to have a dad in his life. It's just, the whole situation is a mess. And he lives a few states away from me. I don't know what to do. I can't really do anything. He's doing things legally. Next, I'm sure he'll petition for some form of custody or visitation. He's not married anymore, supposedly, but he's a lot more established than I am. He has considerably more financial resources. I also know he has all sorts of connections where he lives. Luckily they don't hold as much weight here in my state, but it's still so scary to me. I'm a bad mom. I brought my son into this world knowing it was a messy situation. I just got so comfortable with it just being the two of us, and now I don't want to give that up. Update. I won't go over the entire situation again, my previous posts detail everything. In short, I got pregnant from an affair with a married man. He wanted me to have an abortion, but I ultimately chose to keep the baby. When I made that decision, he became hostile, and I promised not to legally name him as the father or seek child support. I moved away, putting about 12 hours of distance between us, returning to my hometown to be near my family. In the more than 3 years since, I have had no contact with him. Out of nowhere, his ex-wife contacted me through social media. At first, she claimed she wanted our children to connect, but when I politely declined, since her kids are teenagers, my son is a toddler, and we live in different states, she admitted she was actually reaching out on behalf of her ex-husband. Supposedly, after a near-fatal accident, he had a change of heart and now wanted to be involved in our child's life. The whole thing made me uneasy, so I chose not to engage further. Then, I received a letter from him. In it, he expressed his desire to be involved with our son and provide financial support. But after years of silence and hostility, it felt strange. If he truly wanted to take responsibility, he could have reached out at any point. He hadn't, and yet his ex-wife had no trouble finding me online and locating my address. I figured that if he was serious, he would take legal steps to establish paternity, and that's exactly what he did. About a month and a half ago, we were ordered to submit DNA samples for a paternity test. The results, which took about 5 weeks, confirmed what I already knew. Now, we're in another waiting period before the next phase of the court process begins. Throughout all of this, I haven't spoken to him. I never responded to his letter, and my lawyer is handling everything on my behalf. Then, last weekend, he showed up at my house completely unannounced. He knocked on my door like it was the most normal thing in the world. He told me that since this is his son, he doesn't see the point in waiting another 6 weeks for the court to mandate custody mediation, his exact words. He wanted to know why I couldn't just talk to him directly. I told him that his presence made me uncomfortable, and showing up at my home without warning only added to that. But honestly, I wasn't sure what unsettled me more, the fact that he came uninvited or the way I instantly felt the same attraction toward him that I had back then. I didn't want to feel that at all. A part of me was even happy to see him, which disgusted me. It was a conflicting, overwhelming moment. He said he doesn't understand why we can't just talk about this. He's not trying to take my son away from me, he just wants to be involved in his life and to help provide for him like he should have been all along. He's sorry he wasn't there when he was born. He's sorry he reacted the way that he did when I didn't go along with his plans to take me on an abortion vacation. Why can't I believe that he just wants to be a dad to his kid? I guess I agree with him. Why can't I just accept that he has had a change of heart? I can't trust myself. I can't trust my own judgment. I feel like if I easily let him into my son's life, I'm going to end up regretting it and be made a fool of somehow. I've already made so many mistakes when it comes to him. He says it's foolish of me not to at least try working things out between us first instead of letting the court have so much control. I don't know whether he genuinely believes that or if it's just a tactic to push me into doing what he wants. I know he will eventually get some level of visitation and custody. Maybe it would be better if we tried to reach an agreement on our own, but he has always had this way of influencing me so easily. When it comes to him, I feel completely naive. No one else has ever made me feel this foolish. I do want my son to have a father in his life. I can admit that part of me might be selfish for wanting to keep him close. But the thought of being separated from my child for weeks or months while he's living 12 hours away is unbearable. Right now, I just feel sad, foolish, and defeated. Update. Since people were upset with me for summarizing my situation in previous posts, I won't go into full detail again. If you're interested in the backstory, you can check my past posts. All I'll say is that I have a 3-year-old son who was conceived during an affair with a married man. Initially, he made me promise not to contact him, not to name him as the father, and not to seek child support. But in the past several months, he's been actively pursuing involvement in our son's life. He lives in another state and recently showed up at my house, trying to convince me to handle things directly with him instead of through the courts. Since my last update, we've had a mediation session, and he has met our son twice. For now, his visitation is supervised with me present. Because he lives out of state, visits won't happen weekly. Instead, he'll travel here twice a month and see our son twice during each visit, for a total of 4 in-person visits per month, along with 2 video calls. This arrangement will last 6 months. After that, the same schedule will continue, but his visits will be unsupervised, though he still won't be allowed to take our son out of the area, for another 6 months. After a year, we've agreed to another mediation session to reassess, with his ultimate goal being overnight visits at his home. I'm not even ready to think about that yet. He's already suggesting that I come along for the first few visits, but the idea makes me uneasy. We also have the option to request mediation sooner, and I have a feeling he'll try to push for that. There is also now a child support order in place. While he has agreed to pay, it still has to go through the court process before it becomes official and I start receiving regular payments. In the meantime, he gave me a large check. I hesitated to accept it, not because I don't believe my son deserves financial support, but because I worry that I'll unknowingly make a legal misstep that could hurt me later. Am I committing myself or my son to something by cashing this check? Could he somehow use this against me? Of course, he wasn't thrilled about the 6-month/6-month plan. While he understands that our son shouldn't be sent off with a stranger right away, he wishes we could speed up the process. He even suggested flying both of us to his state so he could spend a couple of weeks getting to know our son. I don't feel comfortable with that right now, maybe in a few months or around the holidays, depending on how things go. But at this point, it feels like too much, too soon. The first 2 meetings went pretty much as I expected. My son is very shy and spent most of the time hiding behind me. Whenever he did step out, the moment his dad spoke to him, he would quickly retreat, staring blankly without responding. He's starting to open up a little, but he still hasn't said a single word to his father. He acts as if his dad isn't there and only talks to me. To his credit, his dad has been patient and understanding. If he's frustrated, he isn't showing it. However, he did suggest that our son should socialize more, perhaps by attending daycare or preschool instead of spending so much time with me and my parents. He also seems thrilled by how much our son resembles him, even more than me. One thing that did bother me was how we introduced him as my son's father. I had already told him that I wanted to be cautious and thoughtful about how we explained it to our barely 3-year-old. He agreed, at least, he said, "Sure, yeah." But at the very first meeting, he introduced himself as Dad. Since then, I've been trying to help my son understand by explaining it in a way he can relate to, like comparing it to how my father is my dad. The whole situation still feels surreal, like I'm just waiting for something to go wrong. Now, it's about coming to terms with this new reality. This adjustment is confusing for my son and difficult for me. Unless something major happens, I know I'll eventually have to share parenting time, school breaks, holidays, and visits to his father's home in another state. It won't happen overnight, but it's the most likely outcome. I just hope his father stays committed. If he proves to be a good dad, then my son deserves that, no matter how hard it is for me to share him. But if he ends up hurting my son, that's another story, one I won't accept so easily. Update. It's been 3 weeks since my last update and just over a month since our new visitation arrangement began. I've seen plenty of comments from people calling me dumb, but I honestly don't understand. What exactly am I doing that's so foolish? I know having a year-long affair with a married man was a huge mistake. I know it was reckless to put myself in a situation where I could end up pregnant. But that's in the past. What am I doing now that's so wrong? I have a lawyer. Yes, I agreed to talk to his wife once. How was I supposed to know she was just doing his bidding? Who would have guessed that? It wasn't like I met her in person, we only had a video call. I felt like I at least owed her that much, a chance to hear me apologize for what I did. But something about it felt off, and I prioritized my son's well-being. I told her I didn't think it was appropriate for me and my 2-year-old to travel to another state to meet her teenage kids. It's not like that conversation gave him some new way to contact me. I was careful with what I shared. I never gave her my address, he didn't need her to get that information. And my talking to her wasn't what led him to establish paternity and reach out about our son. When he contacted me, I didn't just start negotiating with him directly, I got a lawyer. When he showed up at my house unannounced, I didn't let him in. I put my son in his room so he wouldn't see or interact with him. I'm following my lawyer's advice. I attended mediation and am trying to make informed, careful decisions for my son. I can't stop his father from gaining access to him, the court would grant it if I fought it. At least this way, I have some control over how it happens. We're supposed to be using a parenting app for communication. Since my last update, he has started reaching out to me outside of the app. He keeps bringing up the idea of us traveling to visit him, and I've told him no, it's not appropriate, and it's too much, too soon. He's also mentioned changing our son's last name to his, though he frames it as something to consider, maybe in a year or so. He tries to steer our conversations toward personal topics that have nothing to do with our son. I've shut those down and redirected him to the parenting app. He thinks the app is unnecessary, claiming it's only for parents who can't get along. He insists it would be better for our son if we've got along and got to know each other again. He even says he cares about me and what's going on in my life. But I know better than to fall for that. I also didn't cash the check he gave me. I returned it. If he wants to help financially beyond the child support he's ordered to pay, he can purchase items that our son needs out of his own free will, but he isn't to give me cash or checks. My lawyer actually told me that there was nothing wrong with accepting and cashing the check. It wouldn't affect anything related to child support. But knowing him, he could be using this check as something he can bring up later in court, and I just didn't feel comfortable about it. Sure, I would have loved to have kept it. There are quite a few useful things I could have used that money for. Of course, he was upset when I returned the check via certified mail. His plan was foiled. I know he's trying to butter me up for something. I don't know precisely what, but I'm not that stupid that I don't see through him now. Update. Since I'm no longer allowed to post updates on True Off My Chest, I'm sharing this on my profile instead. I'm not even sure if anyone will see it. It seems like someone may have reposted my story elsewhere because, out of nowhere, I started getting messages asking for an update, nearly 2 months after my last post. It's been another 2 months of the same thing. 2 months of him messaging me, half the time about our son, the other half about everything else. Despite having a parenting app for communication, he still won't stick to it. Every other day, I get a direct text from him, "How's our son?" followed by, "You good though? Need anything?" Lately, he's also started sending packages for our son. The most recent one arrived a few days ago, a big box filled with toys, books, and clothes. At first, I wasn't sure what to make of it. Was this just another tactic? But then I looked at what he sent. It was thoughtful, age-appropriate books, clothes that actually fit, and toys my son genuinely enjoyed. It was clear that effort went into it. Whether it was his effort or someone else's, hopefully not his poor ex-wife's, I don't know. But for a brief moment, I could see him trying to be a father, and I found myself appreciating that, at least a little. Even so, I'm staying cautious. I'm not letting my guard down. The nice gestures come alongside things that make me uneasy. Once again, he brought up the idea of changing my son's last name, maybe in a year or so. I don't know why he keeps mentioning it like it's just an inevitable decision we'll both agree on. That said, I can't deny that his consistency, with child support and gifts, has relieved some financial pressure. He's contributing in ways that actually make a difference. My son seems happy with the things he sent, and while I don't want to become dependent on it, it is nice not to worry about buying new clothes every month. Right now, the hardest part is finding balance. How do I acknowledge the positive things he's doing without becoming too trusting? How do I protect my son from being hurt if his father loses interest or starts pushing too hard? I'm still following my lawyer's advice, still documenting everything. But as the dynamic shifts, I'm just trying to keep up. Some days, things feel calm, like maybe this arrangement could work. Other days, I feel the weight of what's ahead, because I know he's going to keep pushing for more. More time, overnights, a bigger role in our son's life. Now he's saying it's unfair if I don't let him spend extra time with our son during the holidays. He practically threw a tantrum over it. When I refused to travel to see him, he suggested renting an Airbnb so we could stay together. What? Why would I agree to that? He already has a scheduled visit in December, he'll see him then. But of course, he didn't take that well. Instead, he called me a narcissistic, paranoid parent who's trying to keep our son all to myself, claiming I'm psychologically damaging him by not forcing him to suddenly play happy family with a man who was a complete stranger to him until recently. And the worst part? He says it in a way that makes me start to doubt myself. It gets in my head, and suddenly I'm questioning whether I am being unreasonable. I don't understand why he can't just be patient and act like a normal, responsible adult. I'm cooperating. I know their contact and time together will increase gradually being the key word. I'm not even trying to stop that from happening. I just can't pretend like the last 3 years never happened. I can't go along with this fantasy where he suddenly gets to step in and play the role of a fully involved father overnight. He's also trying to bribe me with money again. I'm not talking about the court-ordered child support and things like that. He asked me how much debt I had and I wouldn't tell him. He kept pushing me to tell him, because he would consider paying it off for me. Come on, let me help you. It's not help out if the kindness of his heart. He says there aren't strings attached, but I'm sure there are. He'll expect something in return, like for me to agree to change our son's name and allow some sort of custody arrangement I'm uncomfortable with. I do have a lot of debt that's a huge stressor on me, and yes, I've considered taking advantage of his offer, but not when I know my son is the price I have to pay. He told me he can find out how much debt I have if I don't tell him, and that he knows a lot more about me than I realize. I hope that's just him trying to intimidate me. It sounds like it's mostly just talk and something stupid he'd say. He is sounding more and more like his old self though. So much for this accident really changing him for the better. He's really had me fooled at moments. At the end of the day, it's not money or fancy things that would go a long way with me. It's things like a genuine apologize for threatening to kill me, you know, little things like that which go completely ignored and swept under the rug that would mean much more to me, but only if it was completely genuine. Update. I'm posting a quick update because several people have reached out, worried about my safety. To reassure everyone, I'm fine, and my son is fine. I truly appreciate the concern. There just hasn't been much of a change worth updating until recently. We're still following the same visitation schedule, with my son's father traveling here for visits. He hasn't missed one, continues to pay child support as required, and aside from being overly pushy at times, things are going relatively smoothly. My son has grown more comfortable around him. He doesn't hide behind me or stay silent the whole time anymore. But I think he still struggles to understand that this man is his father. To him, he's just a friendly guy who comes by a couple of times a month to play and bring him toys. Last weekend was one of his visitation weekends, and he bought tickets for a Polar Express train ride. I had planned to do something like that when my son was a little older, maybe 4 or 5, but since the tickets were already purchased, we went. The three of us spent the weekend together. While I don't feel threatened by him, I'm also not comfortable with him taking my son out alone yet. I wasn't thrilled about the trip. I felt like I was being pressured into it. We stayed at a beautifully decorated hotel that was part of the Polar Express package. I worried he might expect us to share a room, but thankfully, he booked separate ones. The train ride itself was fun, and my son had a great time. He didn't seem too interested in Santa, but he loved the hot cocoa, the jingle bell, and the pancake breakfast the next morning. He got a little cranky toward the end of the ride, but overall, it was a nice experience. I even got some beautiful pictures I'll cherish forever. For most of the trip, things were fine. I tolerated being around my son's father. I wasn't focused on him, I could almost ignore his presence. But then, after we got back from the train ride, he completely ruined the mood. He told me he loved me and wished we were sharing a bed that night. I shut it down immediately, telling him I didn't want to talk about it, that it would ruin the weekend, and that we would not be sleeping together. He didn't understand why I'm so resistant to him. It's like he thinks I can just forget how he treated me and our son when I refused to have an abortion. When I told him I can't get over what he said and did, his response was, "I didn't mean it, that was years ago." As if time alone should erase everything. I refused to continue the conversation, but I couldn't help myself. I asked him why he's even doing all this. I don't believe that his accident suddenly caused some selfless change of heart. His answer? He claims he just wants to be there for our son and that I should be happy that my son has a father in his life. He also said he can give our son so much and that I'm keeping him from that because of my pride. According to him, the only reason I won't take him back is because I'm stubborn and refuse to let him make my life better. So, the weekend ended on a sour note. We won't see him again until January. He's barely tried to talk to me since then, just his short, scheduled video calls with our son, where he usually tries to rope me into a conversation. But lately, he started ignoring me instead. I'm considering asking my dad to take my son for the next few visits. My dad has zero interest in spending time with my ex, and my ex definitely wouldn't want to be around my dad, which might be for the best. It would send a very clear message.